Hi, welcome to WoW Flash. This is my weekly news segment where I talk about anything that's been going on around Warcraft in the past 7 days. And we'll start off with the news. It sort of blew up this week. A few notable YouTubers have been talking about this. I sort of felt compelled to add my own into the mix as well. About the 77-day interval thing. Someone noted this some time ago, really, that there's 77 days between each patch. Now, I've covered that in a video that I've just put out just before I've done this, so I won't go into any more detail on that. But just to say that it may well be the case that 7.3 actually is a shorter interval between 7.2.5 and 7.3. But that still sets it up by the looks of it for the Argus raid being round about BlizzCon time. It would make sense for me to be just after BlizzCon, I would say. So then at BlizzCon they've got some stuff to talk about. Unless, of course, they've got some really big stuff to talk about at BlizzCon, i.e. a new expansion, but who knows for that. The Argus raid testing is about to start, and I suppose if they were going to be bringing out the Argus raid round about late October, early November time, then of course they do need to be cracking onto it, so that's going to be starting tonight, presumably with all the unstable servers that often come with it, but usually you do get a reasonable amount of testing on it. Unfortunately, my guild doesn't test on the PTR anymore, so I tested like all the raid bosses in WoD and then none of them at all in Legion. But hey ho, as long as Fat Boss are doing them, so they can put out little guides for us mere mortals later on. The Light Forged Golem mount, which you've got, without giving too much away, you do get a little ride of this during a quest on Argus, and it's a nice looking mount. Of course, we've had a few of these sort of mechanical mounts, haven't we, in the game? But this one looks very nice, very paladin-y. It's about time they started to bring out some more mounts that I could feel good in my paladin. People imagined you'd have to do some sort of obscure or difficult content to get this. It's just a faction reward. You get Exalted with new faction on Argus, and then you can just purchase it as one of the Exalted rewards. So that's quite nice. The Ugly as Sin mount, as we already noted last week, is the reward from Mythic, well, last boss of Argus, which I won't talk about the name of because people keep considering that a spoiler. Although there will be spoilers coming, I'm going to be doing a series of videos on what's coming with patch 7.3 starting, well, throughout next week. The aim is one a day, really short ones just to cover the basics. Exorsus, this seems like old news now. It's the same when Method killed it, because Method killed it at the weekend when they killed it, you know, a bit ago now. And when I was talking about it now, it seemed like a long time ago, but it wasn't. Same with Exorsus. Exorsus got the world's second. In fact, 4 guilds have now killed Jaden on Mythic mode. It's been followed by a couple of sort of Chinese/Korean guilds. I don't want to sort of say which is which. I might get it wrong. Asian guilds. But they also had a few choice things to say. Both Method and Exorsus, of course, criticised the Mythic Tomb of Sargeras bosses. But Exorsus had quite a few things to say. I'm going to talk about those in a bit more detail because some of the comments Exorsus GM was getting are the same sort of comments I was getting when I did my video on it as well. So I'm actually going to address those in my mailbox on Sunday, but I'm going to put links down in the description below to, first of all, a short interview with Exorsus on Icy Veins, but also to a Reddit post by Exorsus on fleshing out some of the details and criticisms, and make some very, very interesting points in there, including, I think, the most interesting thing they say, because you get a lot of people who are talking about, oh, well, you know, it used to be the case, and then it used to take ages to kill a raid boss in, like, you know, vanilla and TBC and all the rest of it. You know, what's the problem? I mean, I explained what the problem was in my video, so I'm not going to repeat that here. But one thing they pointed out, which people don't seem to appreciate, is back in those days, where you got the best gear from was raiding. So what happened is, you got to a boss, and okay, you didn't quite have the gear for it, that's fine. So you spent another few weeks farming the bosses you could kill. Your gear got better week on week. You got better and better gear. Your raid did anyway. Hopefully you did every now and then. And then eventually your gear was good enough to push yourself through that wall. Obviously, you'd have also improved your technique against that boss. So that gap between what you need to be able to do and what you were able to do narrowed to the point where you could just crawl over the line. Doesn't really work like that now. You know, you don't automatically go up in item level week on week because you might already have really good gear. there were people, I mean, Exorsus themselves said they had an average of 930-ish item level when they defeated Mythic Avatar. That's the same item level as the gear that drops off it. Just to put it into context. Because you can get really good gear elsewhere. You can get Titan Forge gear in the raids, as well as from Mythic Plus dungeons. You know, and you play it enough and enough and enough, and it's not actually a lucky thing at that point. It's sort of almost expected. You know, there is still luck for them, but in terms of exactly what pieces get Titan Forged up. But when you play it enough, you sort of smooth out that luck, and you end up with really, really high item level. I mean, I've only just now got to about 930-ish, and again, I've got pieces, I am wearing pieces from dungeons that are better than anything that can drop into Tomb of Sargeras, for example. You know, because they're better itemized, for example. They've got better stats on them. So it's a whole different ball game. You know, the Mythic Plus dungeon system makes it, and the Titan Forging system as well, makes raiding an entirely different ball game. Something I'm going to talk about in a separate video. So, the other thing is, of course, Method released their kill video. This is a little bit unusual because generally they wait for a few guilds to have killed. It's usually about 5 by convention. But that's also because usually, like, you know, someone kills it first. Often it's been Method in the past. Then someone else kills it, then a few more kill it. And, you know, within a couple of weeks, people have killed it. That hasn't happened this time. It hasn't happened at all. So I guess they just thought to themselves, well, you know, it's been out for over a week. We'll just release it anyway, which I'm sure they talked to the other guilds as well. So that's fair enough. But they have released, of course, their kill video. There have been a number of changes to a few classes and specs this reset. So if it applied to you, I'm sure you already know about these. So it's nerfs to some. Hello, Subtlety Rogues and Arms Warriors. And buffs to others. But there's also been some changes announced with the 7.3 class changes. And this is another thing where I was thinking, you know, maybe, because we are getting this strong suggestion that 7.3 is going to come out a little bit earlier than some people have been thinking. And there is a lot of credence to this. One of which is, as I say, there are a number of class spec changes that could easily be put in right now as a hotfix. They're so simple. And you wonder why waiting for 7.3, but it doesn't actually make that, you know, it's not actually that perplexing if you think 7.3 is really close, like a few weeks away. So, but there have been some announced, so Retribution Paladin, for example, was mine. I'm going to be talking about that this weekend, what those changes mean. There's a few nerfs in there, which are actually good nerfs, if there's such a thing, there are, but also some nice buffs as well. And finally, which may be of some minor interest to some people, is in 7.3 there's going to be a fixed world boss rotation. As it is at the moment, it's completely random. I always had my doubts about how random it was because taking you way back to when Legion launched. So the first world boss was whoever it was, I can't remember. I think it was the fish in Asuna. Then we had Withered Jim. Now Withered Jim, of course, is the king of all world bosses because he drops the stat stick trinket, which certainly at the time was immensely powerful for so many classes and specs. And even now you still do it because you're hopeful of a Titan Forge trinket. But then, so I remember he was the second boss, I distinctly remember, but he was also the third boss. And I remember thinking at the time, I wonder if Blizzard have fiddled with it because they've seen how powerful this trinket is and how desirable it is. And there's a lot of disappointed people who didn't get it the first week. Maybe they've just given them a second go at it. But if Blizzard said it's completely random, then that's just a coincidence. But they've said that they're going to do a fixed world boss rotation from patch 7.3. So there we are for the news for the last week. On to sort of my streaming news now. So some people who've been following me on Twitch will notice I've been doing a few extra streams. That's really to do with summer. I sort of don't want to give the impression that the streaming is going to be stepped up as such. These standard streams are always as they are at the moment. So Saturday afternoons at 3 PM UK time, I'm going to stream some general gameplay. It's just basically a little chat while I play something futile. It might be World of Warcraft on an alt, for example. It may be PTR. It's not going to be PTR tomorrow, but in general, it could be. It could be a different game. I've done some of these Saturday afternoons with Elder Scrolls Online, for example. It could be anything, but it'll be just some general gameplay for the afternoon. Tuesday evening, my point of view, 7 p.m. UK time, is when we do the Tuesday talk. This is a general WoW discussion, so we talk about whatever. I usually post those ones onto, well, I do post those ones onto YouTube as well. As you can see, they're generally about 2 hours chat. Then Wednesday is a raid night for my guild, and I tend to stream that raid because it's farm, so you know it's a bit heroic, bit of mythic. There's a lower chance of me being sat out, but of course with mythic, I could always potentially be sat out for bosses that I don't need. There are bosses I don't need, and if people need them, obviously I'm going to sit out on those ones. But I do; those are the scheduled ones. Now, I do tend to stream raids in general, so my other guild raids are Thursday nights and Monday nights, behave yourself. But there's always it's unscheduled because there is always a potential that I wouldn't actually be in it. So I don't actually schedule that one. But if you follow me on Twitch, you'll see when I'm streaming anyway. If you follow me on Twitter, I tend to say in advance when I'm streaming as well. And I've also been doing some, from my point of view, not even late night, early morning streaming as I wreck my body clock, where I've been streaming some Lord of the Rings Online. And again, I mean, sometimes it might be Elder Scrolls Online. It's just been Lord of the Rings Online this week. But Lord of the Rings Online is getting a new expansion on Monday, so I'm going to be doing some extra streaming for that on Monday as well. So there we are. Thanks very much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.